Hey guys, welcome to tonight's live stream. We're going to be checking out Rhodes Anthology, their brand new plugin from the only official Rhodes company plugin, right, for these classic instruments. Super excited. We do a live stream here on this YouTube channel every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. So if you're into synthesizers and keyboards, this is the place to be. Welcome. Smash that subscribe button. Helps a whole lot. Anyways, I got a 30% off affiliate link in the description below. So this is $100 right now if you hit the link, which is super cool. Thank you very much for Rhodes for sending this over for me to check out. It's an honor to have Rhodes send you something to check out, of course, because we're going all the way back to before synthesizers were a thing. I'm not going to be playing any Riders on the Storm or anything like that tonight because there's other YouTubers who are going to be better for that. But what I do like to do is dig deep into little details. Tracy, welcome. So very cool. Yeah, so as a Sparkletop on Riders on the Storm, that's correct. And so this is the first time we have this from Rhodes. Earlier on, we checked out the Rhodes V8 back when that launched. And super cool plugin, but it's a recreation of the Rhodes Mark 8, which is their current version of the Rhodes, costs over $10,000. So what's great about this is, we'll pull this up real quick. We have the Rhodes Mark 1. So if I go find that real quick out of this, we can hear what this sounds like. The original instrument. And if we go check that out versus the Sparkletop, we'll be able to immediately see, you know, that there's a vibe difference. And we have other things, like if we wanted to run it through the speaker, we can just turn this on and then, you know, we get a sort of a different vibe. We could try it with a SM58 sound. A little bit more edgy sound to it. Yeah, this came out yesterday, so very excited to be here. We'll check out a bunch of presets. Maybe we should do that first, just so you guys can hear kind of how the plugin sounds. But what I really want to dig into is comparisons between the different models. That is, so, you know, the Rhodes Sparkletop versus the Mark 1 and all of that. And then also what we can do with it, making our own sounds and so on and so forth. So let's just listen to the classic Suitcase with a phaser on it, you know. Then all the way up here. Really high notes and yeah. Yep, we do have presets from Dr. Mix himself. So, you know, we've got, I'm not going to try to play How Deep Is Your Love, but oh, that's beautiful, isn't it? And you do get those little details, right? Like of the hammer striking the tine. And underneath my camera here, it's the velocity. So we can also set the curve here. So if you turn it to the right, you get a more exponential curve. So we can adjust that if we want to get a different sort of vibe. And also just depending on what MIDI keyboard you're using. It's a really useful thing. I wish more plugins had a velocity curve sort of built in on them. Let's try Prog Idle from Dr. Mix. Very cool. What else do we have here? We could look at, I wonder what laser beam stands for. Wow, that's interesting. So it's using the rate there. I think. No, it's something else that's causing that. Oh, it's that chorus can be taken really high up into borderline audio rate. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that a real a real Rhodes Mark whatever is going to have that dynamic character. And so I think a lot of the times, especially if you don't have the most expensive MIDI controller, it's probably a good idea to sort of dial back that velocity curve a bit. Let's try Mark 1 Suitcase Chorus. So again, this is using this emulation of a speaker here, probably a IR. And just to kind of highlight that, let's pull that velocity back a bit. Yeah, it does. Yo, what's up, Gingy? The Synth Cat. Tron Dog. And, you know, what's wonderful about this plugin, Rhodes V8, very deep plugin where you can be adjusting the bias of individual tines, taking tines in and out of tune and stuff like that. With this, it's much simpler. And we can just turn on a little, just get ourselves a little bit of delay. Yeah, so just beautiful. Let's jump over to the Mark V. So the Mark V, for those of you guys who don't know, is generally considered to be the best version. There's Mark V in Florida near me. I just can't, it's so expensive, but you know, let's just check it out. So let's just do the default so we can kind of hear, we can acquaint ourselves with how this sounds. I mean, immediately you get why the Mark V. Just the clarity. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Very beautiful. And it sounds to me too, I'm not sure if there's really too many other plugins that have emulated this particular Mark. You usually see the Mark 1 being emulated. And for what it's worth, if you're into vintage, actually Rhodes, I think the Marks 2 and 3, I don't know about the 4. We'd have to ask my friend Jeremy Parker. I think he has a Mark 3. It's interesting. I think it has like a string machine built into it too, something like that. It's good to see you too, Gingy. Really beautiful. And we could play around with some presets, but it's also just pretty easy to dial stuff in directly from the front panel. But let's play some stuff. Bass heavy delay. Wow. Whirly 200. So you've had both now, Nick. I'd be curious to know which you prefer, the Rhodes or the Whirly sound. Yeah. Yeah, I think some of these did have MIDI. I could be wrong about that. Let's try Dark Spring. Let's see how that sounds. Yeah, really kind of gives it a different vibe. So basically, especially when you look at how few controls we really have, we have these sort of double knobs, which is a I'm kind of mixed on. I think that it's obviously a tribute to the original hardware, which has this like inner knob and outer knob thing. As far as actually using it, it's probably fine. It's probably something to get used to real quick, but I always find my eye leaving the knob, looking down at frequency or gain, looking back at the knob, trying to figure out which is the center, and then looking down. Like I do a bit of back and forth. And that's just the nature of what it is. It's okay. It's not a problem, really. But, you know, I just want to give you guys my honest opinion. Oh, that's a very good preset. Maybe there's a MIDI kit for it. Rhodes for playing soft and Whirly for rocking out. Yeah, I myself too think the Rhodes sound, I much prefer it when it's kind of like when people are really hammering on it, that's a certain kind of sound, which is great for that type of music. For me, I'm a I like that sort of more ballady side, ballady expression. Let's try super wet. Fucking love it wet. It's definitely super. You can slap it, but for me, yeah, not my thing as much. Let's try just in the hall. Let's see. Oh, that's very nice. Little bit of hall reverb, nothing too crazy. Let's increase that all the way and see. Got a kind of a good sound. Bringing it back a little bit and just. And of course, we can crank the time if we really wanted to go there. All the way up to 40 seconds. Which is a pretty wild amount of time. And so, yeah, you could basically turn that into pretty much an infinite reverb, which is impressive in a plugin that you wouldn't, necessarily associate with infinite reverb. Ed from Earth, how's it going, my friend? That's super cool. Super, super cool, Todd. Yeah, we got a lot of scum in the chat. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? I got some gin here I'm going to drink, but it would be awesome to do a quick little cheers here. I just want to say thank you to everybody who makes Wednesday nights here on YouTube the place to be. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? I love to see that spam. Just emoji spam this bitch up. Cheers, guys. Yes, ma'am. Drinking gin straight. So, jumping over to the Mark 7 here. Look at that paint job. That is a choice. It's interesting. It's kind of got like a more warm vintagey sound than the actual vintage one. I don't know the year the Mark 7 came out, but so I'm going to play that 7th chord, and then we'll jump to the Mark 5. Like how much more of the tine you get from that. Jumping over to the Mark 1 default, so going from 5 to 1. Really warm in comparison. Budget Keyboardist, welcome. How's it going? Well, what I will say is we've still got a while to go before I reach a verdict on what I think about this plugin, because this is my first time checking it out too. Just came out yesterday. What I will say is Rhodes V8, their emulation of the Mark 8, has got to be the most thorough sampling of a Rhodes piano ever. Without a doubt. It is the most intense. Where that plugin fell short for me, there's a couple of things. Latency, and another thing was that it was kind of complicated, but really like being able to control those tines wasn't necessarily something I ever saw myself doing. Like I don't need to take one tine slightly out of tune or slightly biased a certain way. And another thing was just that it overall, I think the problem with it is that the Mark 8 sound, it's an incredible instrument, no doubting that, but it isn't necessarily that classic Rhodes sound. So when you go for that, like you're like, ooh, I want to get a little of that Vangelis or a little Riders on the Storm action or whatever song. I don't know. What are some other really great Rhodes songs that I can't play? It didn't exactly sound like that. So what's really exciting about Anthology, and I'll just try to plug it again. I'm going to try to say it a few times throughout the stream for people who show up later on. There is a 30% off affiliate link in the description. So if you're excited to get this plugin, please use my affiliate link. I appreciate it. So the thing is that this gives you that sound. So going back to, let's go back to F minor chord. And actually, why don't we put a little, let's put a little E in there. We get the 7th in there. That's the Mark 1 default. Why don't we change that over to the MKV default so you guys can hear the difference. Just that upper mid-range difference is huge. For some, though, it might not be as warm. They might prefer, you know, the more vintagey sound of the Mark 1. I love the sound of those tines. So going from the Mark 1 to the Mark 7, sounds remarkably close, doesn't it? Going back to the Mark 1, let's just see. I notice it like on the release of the sound, you get more of that tine action at the top. And there's a little bit more honky bite to the 7, but it's close. I definitely think with the 7, they were going for capturing that original Rhodes sound. So jumping back to the Mark 1, let's go check out versus the Sparkletop. Now this is where it gets interesting. So F minor 7. Kind of that brighter sort of sound, but still the more muted tine characteristic as opposed to the Mark 5. Let's check this out. So for me, the Mark 5 is my personal taste, the winner, because you get that wonderful little characteristic. Air is touring their classic album Moon Safari. Definitely need to check that out. Definitely. When I listen to that sound, it just feels like my face is inside the keyboard, right? And I'm hearing the click. Very cool. All right, so we could go with a warm Sparkletop. So this is the original version, I believe. Sometimes I think the sound can be a little extreme with the panning, but of course we could always dial that back. Let's go Lush Sauce. It's a little pushed, isn't it? Let me pull the volume back a bit. But fucking very beautiful. Of course, Dr. Mix is going to put out some great stuff. I just love that he pinned the volume all the way at the top. Sparkle Suitcase. So this is giving us more if we want to get that sort of sound out of it. So let's turn the reverb off real quick. Let's go back to just, let's go to the default Mark V, since that's my personal fave. Unfortunately, you guys are kind of stuck with that. Why don't we go through now what all of our options are on the actual plugin? So we have volume. And it seems pretty clean. Drive, I think, is a big factor in getting that Rhodes sound, depending on what type of Rhodes sound you're going for. Of course, I mean, this is a little extreme, right? One of the things that was a bit of an issue for me with V8 is like, what's the purpose of that? Like, why are we going that extreme? Then again, maybe the preamp could be driven that hard, and it's just I wasn't aware of that. We could turn the equalizer on and off, which is interesting. Turning it on versus off. I don't think it does anything. But, you know, there's that. Let's boost the low end. Turn the boost on. What's interesting is playing up not that high. You can hear that it's a very low frequency being pushed there. We do have control over the mids as well, so that's cool if we want to get a little hunkier. Actually, kind of a good frequency there. Just for pushing it through the mix a little bit. And it is sweepable too. So we can change. And you'll notice up here that we get a real-time update so we can see where we're at. And let's kill the boost there, and let's boost the high up. I don't know if I love the high-end boost. I'm sure it's authentic. I wouldn't be surprised. Esteban, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Dub says, no, like the overdrive, Heimbach has a vid overdriving a Rhodes into an Alesis quadriverb. So are you saying that the drive feels authentic there? Rob, welcome. Zozilla, welcome. How's it going, my friend? The high end for me, just speaking not in terms of authenticity, but just sound. More like a high mid push, and I don't love it. I wish it was a little bit more geared towards air, but I suppose what you could do is kind of find maybe a frequency like 2, pull it out, and then boost up and see if we get a little bit. So that's a way that you could maybe get a little air. So no EQ. With EQ. Zozilla, I've decided because I actually did some blind tests with this in Keyscape before the stream. I will share my thoughts later on in the stream about what I think about this versus Keyscape. Not trying to be one of those YouTubers who's like, oh, keep watching to the end. It's just, I think I want to talk about the plugin as it is, you know, a little bit, because I am a Spectrasonics fanboy, so I can't help but have that part of me. Jumping over to the pan section, you can buy just or it might even be free. I forgot what it was. Definitely go check the affiliate link because it applies to everything on the Rhodes website. If nothing else, the auto pan of this plugin is very good. It's a very... And I think that it gives it it's a way in which it's not quite square and not quite sine, and it's just perfect. And I think like this setting where it's at right now, what is this, about 1 hertz, and 95%, not all the way, just sounds beautiful. It's perfect. I mean, just such a great thing. Yeah, so if you can get, like, here's the thing. That auto pan, in my opinion, is worth it just for that. Like, and that you could use it on whatever you want. And then, of course, like I said, we do have velocity. Now, we have a depth control, so we can turn velocity all the way off. Yes, voice spread would be super cool. So if you turn that off, it doesn't matter how hard you hit the keys, you get the same result. If you turn the curve up and down, the extreme version is going to give you a more ballady type sound. But at my highest velocity, I can still get the loudest hits. But if I do anything less than that, it's sort of sucking that out, and then vice versa. If we want it to be a little harder, go all the way to the right. So the velocity curve section for me is dual purpose. A, it's useful to have a velocity curve just for tailoring the feel of your keyboard. And like I said earlier, I think this is something every plugin should have. Like, let's just control the feel, because not everybody's MIDI keyboard's the same. Going a little left or a little right on this might make it feel more natural for you, depending on what your keyboard is. But on the other hand, it's also kind of a useful tone control where you can go in and, really kind of like, okay, I like what's going on here, but I just want it to be a little more consistently loud. For my keyboard, that's actually probably a little bit more accurate. So we can actually leave that on there. Let's check out the chorus. I don't know what chorus it's emulating. It wouldn't be my personal pick, but it is certainly that famous sound, right? And we could turn the depth down. Oh, and then it's actually very beautiful. Right? That's gorgeous. Yeah, just great. So with the pan and chorus on, man, you're starting to get some real... really great, really beautiful sounds. Let's kick on the phaser. So dry with the phaser. So, I mean, I think in terms of when we're talking about the pan, the chorus, the phaser, top notch. Rum and Hippie, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Very cool. If we push the depth, get a little more of that psychedelic-y 70s. I know I have the Arturia version in Keyscape. I don't have the UAD version. And then, yeah, bringing it down and maybe even slowing it down. Let's see. Real subtle. If we do like 50-50, it's pretty subtle. And of course, these can be sunk to your tempo in your DAW. Why you would do that, I don't know. To me, that's crazy. Even with the pan or something, I think... Ron says, hear a lot of distortion on the Rhodes sound in Riders on the Storm. How did they do it? It's probably just hitting the Rhodes with a good amount of push. I have a tendency to like playing it a little quietly. So one way you could do that is just increasing the velocity curve. you know, to get that sort of sound. And then, of course, as you increase the drive, you're going to get more of that. Yeah, using some real tubes, too. Yeah, real nasty preamp drive we could get going there. I'd be curious to know, you know, to someone who's had a Rhodes, how authentic that drive feels. My guess on the last stream when we checked out V8 was that the drive was kind of where it fell short for me a little bit. I could be completely wrong. It could be exactly perfect and authentic, but to my ears, it didn't quite get there for me. Then we can actually run the Rhodes through different things. So we've been listening to just the direct signal, which is probably what I would use most of the time. Yes, we have this little velocity curve knob over here. Now, custom, like if you want to have it, you know, low mids or something, we don't have that. We just have a basic velocity curve, which is still pretty good. Yeah, so what we could do is we got the Suitcase 79 here, and we can change the microphone. But why don't we go to the Duo, right, and then swap this to an SM58. And without adding any drive, we're already getting into that bitier sort of territory. Right? Add a little drive. Oh, yeah. I forgot I was wearing my Mulholland Drive Cult of Cult shirt. Big fan of that movie. And of course, we can, you know, push the drive, push the chorus, push the phaser. It's starting to sound pretty authentic, right? So this is like use a little of everything. You don't go too crazy. Let's dial the pan back a little. Actually, I liked a little wider. Yeah, it's good when it's wide. Yeah, so, you know, a little bit of all of that goes a long way. Now, something I was just interested in, I'm turning off everything. We're going to a cardioid, a Neumann. What is that, a 105? Definitely a different sound. I just want to see if the drive changes as we change the amp. I don't think so. I think it's just changing the convolution there. But going through the Suitcase, and then we can change all the way back over here to say the Sparkletop through the Suitcase with the cardioid. It's the edibles dub. It's a perfectly clean video. Yeah, definitely. You know, if you're going for that vintage sound, I hate to say, like, I love the direct sound of the Rhodes. But that to me feels, you know, pressed to tape. Again, that's with everything off. We're just listening to the Sparkletop, Suitcase, Cardioid, jumping over to the Duo. The Duo is really good for giving it sort of like a mix-ready sort of sound where it kind of controls the low end. But I hate that. I would go up. That to me kind of immediately takes it into that space. SM58. Actually, not so bad. I hear that low end with the cardioid. Cardioid gives you low mids, but the low end's kind of is with a little less of those low mids from the 57. Gives you a little bit more room sonically for the high end to cut through. The Duo and the dynamic is pretty good too. Yeah, I was kidding, Todd. It's absolutely a VHS filter. I like the way that it grabs the tines. Up there it gets a little bit interesting. Yeah, sorry, I was my dry sense of humor might have gotten me the best of me there. Dubstation is definitely a VHS filter on the stream. Yeah, it kind of gives it a different sort of vibe, and I like it. I still think, though, for me, I'm probably going to just, most of the time. It's so thick, whereas the Duo kind of gives it a little bit more mix-ready sort of a sound without having to dig into the equalizer too much. So that's kind of cool. We could put our little scoop mid thing on that and see how that affects it. Smallest amount of drive. Kind of for that retro sort of feeling. Yeah. Now, digging into the delay, let's kick that on and just nice, easy delay. Nothing too crazy. We can increase the feedback. Let's see. It is warbling. So it does have a little bit of tape delay warble to it, but you're not going to push it into self-oscillation. Let's check out the time on it. Really slow. Conversely, if we go down, we can go to... We can actually use it as a chorus. Try to break it. It's kind of interesting, sort of metallic tubey. I don't know why you'd ever use it like that. Really high feedback amounts, so turn it almost into like a reverb. Yeah, so that's what we could do with the delay. Check out the reverb. Now, I can't tell if type changes the actual preset because it also moves through where the knob's at. So, yeah, it does change the type. That's a very wide sound. So the spring, let's see how far we could take the reverb time. You'll notice this percentage amount, which makes me wonder if it's a convolution reverb. Because that sounds pretty springy, right? And if we go less, that... Yeah, I think it is a convolution reverb. Yeah, you could hear that the vibrations of the string slow down. Interesting. Plate. Room. Room sounds good. No tone controls, though, that I'm aware of. So that's a interesting choice. I mean, I love that they went for minimalism here, right? They were like, you know what? We're going to do a plugin. We're going to give you some easy knobs. It's just about the sound of the Rhodes. We're not going too crazy. Yeah, it's one of those things. If maybe you don't love the sound of the room, well, you're kind of stuck with it. Looks like we can increase the room to 60 seconds, which is a lot of seconds. Yeah, just really fascinating. Same thing with Hall. We can just get pretty infinite with it. So bringing the time down a bit, maybe to like, let's try, 15 seconds. That would normally be a really long reverb, right? Let's try and see if we can turn this with the wet all the way up into something of a pad. Because we don't have like a size parameter, we can't slow the attack down enough to really turn it into a pad. It's very nice. I think if anything, Room and Hall have a very similar character to it. Plate is a little ringy. And it's interesting too, because this dry mix, you could tell, even when I kill the dry, you're still hearing ringing. So it's like a send amount, interestingly. So I believe that's everything, right? There's not really that much to the plugin, and it's so it's there. Yeah. Zozilla, you're right. Using Retro Color from XLN, one of my favorite plugins. Super great. Wish they had a version that had no latency. My one gripe about that. You know, I'm a latency complainer, which brings me, I suppose, to one of my complaints about this plugin, which is, once again, it has latency. And there are so many plugins that don't have latency. It doesn't have a lot of latency, but it does exist. There's some. And if you're in a situation like I am, where you're using this and you're live streaming, so you can't get that buffer size ultra small, even with an awesome computer, there's a little bit of latency, even with the effects off. Yeah. So that's what's super frustrating is they made the choice. I'm assuming it's because of the drive here, because you don't need latency for chorus and phaser and stuff. That can all happen. There's no need for it at all. Maybe convolution reverb, but drive oversampling drive is probably why there's some latency in it. And it would just be great if when the drive's off, you didn't have any latency. And then when you turn the drive on, it oversamples and it gets rid of that. There might be some hidden behind the scenes saturation and stuff going on to emulate, the sounds of these, maybe like some transistor saturation and stuff. So maybe they just couldn't get away from the saturation. They're like, look, we're going to make the choice to add a little bit of latency to clean up the audio, do a 2x oversample to basically get rid of any possibility of digital artifacting. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that in today's day and age, they're like, look, that's just part of the sound of making a great plugin, is that it's going to be super high fidelity. There's no option to turn it off, but I wouldn't mind the option, because I think even if I hit this, there's no option to turn it off. And so it is not quite as snappy as some of my other plugins. And so using it in a live situation too. So if you're a musician and you're a gigging musician and you have a laptop with you, you're already going to have some latency built into that. It's called round trip latency, which is the time from an audio or MIDI signal coming into the computer and then getting processed and being spit back out. That number is never zero, right? Even if you had like a thread ripper, you'd still have some amount. And so by making the choice to have oversampling, and this is what I'm assuming is adding latency, don't quote me on that, I'm not a scientist, but that immediately pushes everything back a little bit, which you don't have that problem. Could be the convolution of the mic and the reverb. But you simply don't have this problem with certain other plugins, whether they bake some of the stuff like the sound of the microphone, for instance, if that's sampled as well, and so it's not requiring any convolution, but it changes what samples you're hearing from the mic'd ones to the not mic'd ones, something like that. Then you get that result. So what's interesting about it is that it still got that latency issue. And then I said I'd mentioned it earlier, but Zozilla asked about Keyscape. So huge fan of Spectrasonics. And I did shoot this out versus Keyscape, which would be my go-to Rhodes sound. And I don't know how this could be, but I thought Keyscape sounded better. And again, I don't really understand how that could be, because, in theory, this is a newer plugin and it's coming directly from Rhodes. They're the masters of Rhodes, obviously, and you would imagine the sampling would be perfect. I don't know if Spectrasonics was running their Rhodes through some really high-end preamps, and that was part of how they recorded it. They also have like the mechanical noise as your own source. So if you want to turn that up and hear the sound of the mechanical noise, all of that sort of stuff, as opposed to just the direct signal, you could do so. And so I checked it out. Keyscape has both the original, so that's the Mark 1 in it, and it has a Sparkletop, and it has a vintage vibe. So this is the modern vintage vibe makes like their own version of Rhodes. I think they're one of those companies that started by just repairing Rhodes and eventually went on to make their own version, which is, a lot of people say, is like the best version. Damn it, Jim, I'm not a scientist. Yeah, so Parb says, linear phase oversampling is really quite latency intensive. How many samples of latency does the plugin have? I'm running like 64 samples, but again, any number of samples. So if you're not like super familiar with latency, it will, if you have even like one sample of latency, that's going to push you to the next block of audio. So latency is processed in blocks. And in my case, that's 512 blocks or something like that. So you don't really feel it, but when you shoot it out versus something that has no latency, that's when you notice it. Yeah. So, yeah. It's, Parb says, Spectrasonics definitely like to add a little bit of special sauce when they sample instead of going in raw. Yeah, and that's the thing. Of course, Rhodes is going to be the masters of making a product of their product, of Rhodes, right? But I do think Spectrasonics is probably the greatest company when it comes to sampling. And, you know, they've got the tricks. They got the microphones. They got everything that goes into it. Then again, Keyscape's $300, I think. Might even be more, $370 something. This is $100 with the intro sale with the 30% off. You get it with the affiliate link down in the link description below. So from that perspective, it's you know, a really great one. But there are other Rhodes plugins. Native Instruments has one. There's a lot of them out there for around this price that don't have the latency issue. So it's a kind of like a mixed bag there for me. And again, the drive. So you can feel that this plugin, and I like it more than V8 because V8 gives you more control, but I don't feel like any of that control is stuff I would ever use. And this is like kind of perfect. It's like real simple. Here's the sound. Let's not overcomplicate it. I think the problem is, if you don't love the sound of the reverb, when I was mixing my intro, I felt like the delay and reverbs weren't working for me as well as everything else. So then I'm not really going to use the delay and reverb. The pan is awesome. Like, I know it's such a silly sounding thing to be infatuated with, but honestly, the pan is worth it alone. They nailed it. That's how it should sound. That's incredible. EQs, you know, again, I'm probably more likely to use an EQ plugin to do this type of thing. The drive for me is not, and again, I can only go, I know a lot of you in the chat have Rhodes or have had Rhodes in the past. To me, the sound of this is just not, like, that sounds great to me. I don't know what that is, but to me, that doesn't sound like the authentic thing. I mean, it sounds kind of just like generic digital distortion. It doesn't really, for what a tribute this plugin is to the original vintage character of these legendary instruments, I wish the drive gave me that same impression. Now, again, I might be just speaking out of the asshole by talking about something that I don't know about. Maybe this is exactly how the preamp sounds. You guys have to tell me what you think. Yeah, Scarby Rhodes, definitely great. Yeah. Lounge Lizard, you know what? I think I have, and I know I've tried Scarby. Is that the Native Instruments one? Anyways, I know I've tried a few of them. Lounge Lizard, I believe I've tried too. So for me, I have to be honest. I hate to be like, I don't know. Keyscape isn't for everybody. It's expensive. It's got a lot of stuff in it. I mean, it's got like the Crystal Rhodes from the JD800 in it. It's got a lot, but it's probably overkill for a lot of people. As far as, from the Applied Acoustics guys, no, I haven't. So when I think about this plugin, will I use it in my music? No, unfortunately, I probably won't. And so I hope, Rhodes, you keep me sending me stuff, because I'm sure you will make that thing that I love. But you know, there's just like the delay, the reverb, the drive, the EQ, all aren't doing it for me. I think although when you turn a bunch of them on, it kind of gets you there. The chorus phaser and pan are incredible, but you can get those effects separately in the V rack from Rhodes, which you could also use my affiliate link for. So if you love that, maybe you just use that part of it. I do think the simplicity of the plugin is great. I think if I didn't have Keyscape, this would be the clear winner. For $100, this is, you know, and it's got the 4 different flavors. I don't know if they really needed the Mark 7 in there, but the 1, 5, and the Sparkletop is just, it really is great. It gives you the vibe. It's pretty much perfect from that. I wish it had a no latency mode. Oh, we also have these timbre shift. I forgot to mention this. So real quick, this is borrowed from V8. So if you guys remember that stream, we can timbre shift this. And this is like borrowing that same technology they use to sort of affect the bias of the tines. And so if you want a really bright Rhodes sound, wow, so great. Zozilla, have a great night. Oh, that's much better than the EQ, actually. So like that into some reverb. I just wish the reverb was a little darker. It's just a really bright, kind of mid-rangey reverb, which for me isn't my personal favorite sound. Yeah. The filter, yes. The oscillator buzz, no. Really beautiful sound. And then we could take it all the way over. We could bring that down by like 10 semitones and then just... We want to take it into warm, gooey, dreamy. Really beautiful. And we could do that to all of them. Let's go check it out with the Mark 5 and just timbre that up a bit. See what happens, you know, because just to even get a little... That's probably my favorite. Probably pushed a little too far, but yeah, so that's actually, I think, for me, a more effective thing than even the EQ section. So yeah, if you could afford Keyscape, that's still my recommendation. I think it just kind of nails so much and gives you the flexibility while still being very simple to use. That has like a bunch of profiles. I think it's got like 12 of them. It's got like clean, dirty, bright, soft, like all of that. You just click the button, you get the vibe, and that works with all of the different you know, electric pianos and other classic keyboards in Keyscape. So in my opinion, you still can't beat it. However, if I hadn't already shelled out the $300 and whatever for Keyscape, at $100, this is a great thing. And when it comes to classic keyboards, I think a lot of us, I mean, I certainly don't use most of what's in Keyscape. I use the pianos, I use, you know, but I don't use most of what's in it. I'm not like a big gospel player, so a lot of those keyboards, you know, it's not my thing necessarily all the time. But the Rhodes is the ultimate, most beautiful sounding e-piano of all time, in my opinion. I think, and just one of the most beautiful sounds ever. So to have it here in the plugin, yeah, it's pretty much not comparable. to anything else. And I do think it has the sound. I do think it's authentic. If you're not worried about the latency, then it's fine. 500 samples is not a lot of samples. That's like, again, that's my block size. It's 512. You could probably, with a beefy computer or laptop, get it much tighter than that. But I have to back it off because I'm live streaming. I have backing tracks for the intros with effects and all of that. So I can't like try to squeeze every little bit of latency out of my system without it potentially causing a problem for the live stream and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm kind of left with a like a medium yes review. If you can save up to get Keyscape, I do think that's my recommendation. Yeah, I you know, we've been talking about the Prophet 12 in the chat, but just talk about a desert island synth. I understand why it is. It's basically a Prophet VS, but with like hands-on control and just incredible. I mean, I really do think I should get one at some point, but I have another 12 voice hybrid synth I haven't even reviewed yet on this channel yet, just lurking off camera. So I should worry about that one first. But yeah, I think it's great. I think I much prefer this layout. I prefer this plugin over V8 for sure. I think it's also cheaper. I think that it does a great tribute to the original instruments. I think it's great. I think there's some play. I hope that Rhodes listens to this and if they just gave you, it's so, how hard is it to put a setting in here and just turn oversampling off, get a zero latency mode, a live mode, that type of thing. For me, the possible sonic fidelity differences of oversampling are often not worth it. There's also the Gibbs effect, or Gibbs phenomenon. That's something that you don't really know about a lot or don't hear a lot about. But oversampling actually creates its own kinds of distortion and degrades the signal in other ways sometimes. So it's just one of those things where I just wish they'd kind of get on that. I think the equalizer is good, but not great. I think the drive is dubious. I don't think it's wonderful. And I a little, you know, there's some pretty big dead space on this plugin, right? We could have had two knobs here, and one could be a tone control and one could be the dry wet. And that would pretty much, you know, honestly, that on the delay and reverb, that would probably change my opinion without either fixing the latency or fixing just adding a tone knob to delay and reverb. That would probably get me over the edge to being like, this is the recommendation ahead of Keyscape if you want a Rhodes, because that's what this is. I think for most people though, something like having a model of the Mark 7, it's cute. It's a fun like thing. I don't think many people are like dying to have the Mark 7 in their life. I'm sure someone does. I'm sure someone listens to this and they're like, it's like the Mark 1, but just a little bit better. Yeah. They do have a version of, I think it's called the V-Rack or something like that. They do have just the effects. So that's what I think about that. And I think it's good. I think it's not 100% still, but I think it's good. And that's where I'm at with that. And again, Keyscape is a lot. It's a lot for a plugin, right? And I think for a lot of people, it's just too much to spend on if you want a Rhodes sound, in which case I would recommend this. I think that I'd be curious to know in the chat actually, how many of you are actually looking to buy, would buy a new Rhodes plugin? Let me rewrite that. Would you buy a new Rhodes plugin? I'm just curious real quick while we're hanging out here. I'm going to jump on over. How many people would actually buy a new Rhodes plugin? Or do you already have enough, right? I'm just curious as like a rough opinion on the chat. Because for me, I think that might be almost one of the issues, is just that, you know, the plugins, there's so many of them, and if like you already have one or something or two, I don't know. Give you guys a couple more seconds to vote. It's just interesting to me, you know, because Rhodes plugins tend to be given away in bundles a lot of the times, you know, like if you buy like a Native Instruments product, I think you get their Rhodes plugin for free. You know, and for a serious player, for someone who's like, I want to have fucking Rhodes that I can take with me on stage, but I don't want to actually bring a vintage Rhodes out with me. You know, Keyscape is the best you could do, and I think this is too. I just wish it didn't have the latency. That's the thing, is like, if it's a plugin, you have to deal with either zero latency or you're moving on to the next block size. And if for stability reasons, you probably want it to be. So, Gingy says he uses an old Roland A90 for Rhodes patches. Jerome's like, I'd just buy a fucking Rhodes. I'm not a serious player, obviously. My bio says, since played badly every Wednesday. All right, so only 20% of people in this chat said that they are in the market for a Rhodes plugin. So here's the answer. If you want to spend $100 on a Rhodes plugin, get this. It's great. If, you know, the latency, if you're recording at home in a studio, it's not going to be an issue. I don't mean to overblow the latency thing, because it's so little, you probably won't notice it. But again, if you're in a time-sensitive, a real-time situation like I am when I'm live streaming, or you're playing live and you want it to be very stable, then latency does become an issue. So that's like the caveat there. As far as like, you want that sound though, I think that this plugin does it for $100. If you can save up $379 or whatever Keyscape is, that's still my overall recommendation, because I think it gives you everything that you get in this plugin. It doesn't give you the Mark V or the Mark VII. I thought the Mark V sounded the best. So from that perspective, I mean, maybe, you know, that's a little bit of a thing. But I think for all intents and purposes, the Sparkletop, the Vintage Vibe, the original version in Keyscape is very, very good. And it's got all the different profiles, so you sort of make it sound like the Mark V anyways. I think that is a very good thing to get. Plus you get the pianos, you get all sorts of these incredible, I don't know, it's over 30 collector keyboards. So it's hard to compare these two products, because just in terms of scope, Keyscape is so much bigger. Just talking about Rhodes though, I do prefer Keyscape, but I do think that this is a great plugin. So it's basically, do you want to spend $300 or $100? And the diminishing returns there, it's pretty much non-existent. So, Zilla, I'm surprised that Keyscape disappointed you on the digital keys. Gingy says he'd buy it. Aquatic says he thinks it's pretty nice. If I don't bring the Rhodes, I use a Korg SV173, gets it done. Yeah, Ed, it is totally bearable with a tiny buffer size. Like, and even at 512, it's totally bearable. It's just, it is one of those things. And I have to be honest. I mean, that's the good and the bad side of doing this live. And I hope you guys appreciate that, you know, when I'm doing this live, I got to give you the truth. You know, if I was editing it, I'd probably not say as much, because I'd be like, well, look, it's a fucking plugin. It's going to have some latency maybe. You know, like, that's just, you don't, you know, but doing it live, it's like, you know what? I noticed the latency because of my situation. Again, you probably wouldn't have it if it's like the only plugin open in your DAW, right? So yeah. Dubstation says, I sold my Rhodes Mark 1 and used the EP2 preset on my JX8P. Honestly, it's probably amazing. I've heard from Zach from Alamo Labs has a video where he says the JX8P has the best analog key sounds out there. And then, of course, the soundtrack preset. Have a good night, Zozilla. So, Yeah, I mean, I'm not a good enough player to justify the cost either, for sure. So I think that's a good place to call it for the night. I think that hopefully I've inspired someone out there to buy this plugin. If you do buy it, please use my affiliate link. They throw me a little money back, and God knows this whole YouTube channel needs it. That ad revenue ain't what it used to be. Let me put it that way. So I fucking love you guys. I really appreciate each and every one of you who come back week after week. And if you're new here, welcome to the Scum family. Can I get some scum in the chat? I appreciate you guys so much. You guys have changed my life. I just am so grateful to you guys for being here. Super grateful to Rhodes. I mean, how awesome is it that Rhodes is sending a plugin for us to check out? And I just hate the fact that my review is sort of not the most positive, but I have to be honest first and foremost. I hope that if they watch this video, they take the criticism. I hope it comes across as balanced, right? And I'm not being super harsh. I do think it's a great plugin. I just want to be honest with it. Yeah. So that's how I feel about that. So I'm doing really great, Sari. Thank you so much. All right, guys, with that, I'm calling it a night. Continue to be excellent, and I will see you in the next video.